I went for a ride with Phil and his car, and I really like his car. We went and looked at the CRV, and then they turned out they had a RAV4 hybrid. So
I didn't know
they-
Toyota made those in hybrid.
we bought the first one sold as they come.
Oh, okay.
I don't, the CRV's not.
No, but you get good gas mileage.
How's your mileage?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I support last year, and he runs well. When you get 15 hours of snow, it's one thing to go back like 3 years ago. Yeah.
Thanks for coming out. We'll go ahead and get this weather briefing started. This week we have Paul Knight, a retired faculty member of the meteorology department here. And along with this forecast today, are also be doing a little bit of a spring outlook.
Right. And by the way, there's some cookies on the table there that I made, so enjoy them. I don't intend to take them back with me. It's good to see you. Thank you all for coming out, and hopefully we'll be able to get some handle of what the weather pattern is going to be like for the next few hours, few days. I was looking at the radar that was on the EWOL page, Fred, and I see that the EWOL, I should say, and there's this. I guess there's a band of snow that's moving into northern Center County. Unquestionable whether it'll survive over the ridge, but perhaps within 2 hours, hour and a half, we can get another quick covering of snow. I'm going to call this life imitates art, or art imitates life, depending upon how you want to say, with Andy Warhol here, and his famous condensed soup from Campbell's. I think that kind of speaks to what this winter has been like so far. It's a condensed winter. We had one snowstorm that gave a season's worth of snow to places in the eastern half of Pennsylvania, and for that matter, along parts of the northeast coast. And I think this one weekend will give us a season's worth of chill. And whether we're going to be able to do anything beyond that, I don't know. But it really has all come in these big dollops of interesting weather. So I'm going to talk a little bit about winter review, and I will mention my crap awards. We'll take a first glance at spring 2016, and then we'll get into the short term. How cold will it get this weekend? Will there be another band of snow with the Arctic front that comes through Friday night into Saturday morning? The battle for zero. I know that Cyret's thermometer here is pretty stingy, so that it's hard to get us down to zero. We'll see what they'll be able to do. And then will there be what is traditionally called the silver thaw storm? And that is as the cold air relaxes early next week, at least for a couple of days. Will there be a sufficient amount of moisture to get in here to produce some snow or some freezing rain? Look at that. So this is a pending Center for Responsible and Accurate Prediction that I created last year, and you can look at the acronym and understand where we're going with this. An interesting thing happened that you probably heard about this in the news. The ship just docked today in New Jersey. I guess it was New Jersey. Maybe it was Jersey. Yeah. And of course, this was the Royal Caribbean Cruise Company is blaming it on the forecast. So I don't doubt that there'll be some potential forensic case associated with this one. But obviously, these folks were sailing in an area that, as far as I knew, it was going to be an awful storm. And I thought, holy heck, how did they get into that? And so there seems to be shuffling some of the blame. So anyway, let's look at something. This is the research arm. That was the public arm of crap. This is the research arm of crap. And we'll look at the winter outlook. And what I've done is I took the temperature, at least most of course, we're not quite done yet with the season, I understand. So I took the 60 days ending on Groundhog Day, got most of December in there, and I took the GFS, or the CFS, I should say, which is really having a problem these days. It's way too warm in Canada. But I did at least take for the U.S. the cold that's coming, and then I put them together. And this is what I know. John did a nice job wherever you are, John. There it is. Okay, talking about local, Pennsylvania winter to date. But this is what I think the nation will look like at the end of February in terms of DJF, the temperature anomalies, and it really has been exceptionally warm in the area from the northern plains, Great Lakes into the northeast, even the Mid-Atlantic area. And by that, I didn't quantify it other than to say that's probably the orange, or I should say the maroon, are temperatures that are 5 to 6 degrees above normal for that 3-month period, which is quite remarkable. And then this is only about 2 or 3 degrees below normal. The precipitation, of course, is always a bit more challenging to get a signal out of this. This is the 3-month or the 60-day precipitation a few days later. This is the CFS forecast for week 2, week 3, which are available. And then combining that, of course, this is weighted for just a small part of this period. The main message has been that the precipitation has primarily been, in the west and in the middle part of the country. The areas that were forecast by the CFS and other models to be dry were wet. And surprisingly, and if you talk to anybody who's been in upstate New York and parts of interior New England, they haven't had very much snow. In fact, with it being so mild, some of the lakes aren't even frozen over, which is surprising. I don't mean the Great Lakes, I mean Lake Champlain and places like that. So not much ice skating. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look at, this is a summary, so you say, okay, what's this really mean? Obviously, this is the temperature, this is precipitation. I'm going to take some of the classic forecasts that were made back in the autumn, and we're going to grade them and see how they are. I actually don't give them a grade specifically. You can give them a grade. Here's the Old Farmer's Almanac. I can't help but want to beat on that. This is the temperature forecast, so you can see. And it just really stunk up the joint badly in New England, calling it cold and snowy, which has been anything but that. But there are places where it did okay, so the stars show up here and there. And mild and dry in Texas actually wasn't arguably not all that bad of a call in parts. This is the AccuWeather forecast, and they've taken an interesting tack by not necessarily giving you contours of temperature or probabilities of precipitation, but instead highlighting what they think will be the case. The flood risk in New Orleans really did not turn out at all, or at least in Louisiana. The severe storms in Florida was okay. They're mild and dry in the northern Rockies was a pretty good call, but the wet in Texas really was bad. And I don't think anybody expected it to be dry in the western and southern part of Texas. That was a bit of a surprise. Here's Weather Bell. So kudos to Mr. Bastardi and Joe DeLeo and Brian Maui. They actually extended the warmth across into the St. Lawrence Valley. They were one of the few that actually got that far east. But they had this, and this is not necessarily contours of temperature. These are contours of severity of the winter, which reminds me, John, remember we started the Winter Severity Index and then found out that company by those initials existed too, so we couldn't do that. But I don't think it's been that severe of a winter in Kentucky or Tennessee, not to my knowledge. There are other places that they did okay. This is the Weather Service forecast, which actually does show the probabilities of temperature and the likelihood, and excellent forecast in the far west in terms of the warmth stretching across the north. Obviously, nobody really dipped it much into the east, and once again, the forecast for cool in the southeast didn't work out for the Weather Service either. Now, this is the this is the company that I've been working with since I departed these hallowed halls, which is the Prescient Weather. This is our forecast that we made. This is really essentially John Dutton, Jeremy Ross, Richard James, myself. And this is the forecast we made for December, January, February, back in November. And this is the precipitation forecast. I think we actually had the right idea that it was going to be warm into New England. Did take a fair bit of arguing to come to some agreement there. But once again, we thought it would be cool in the southeast. Our precipitation forecast really stank up the joint in the Midwest, where it was wet, where we thought it'd be dry. And of course, we had moist in Texas, which was not the case at all. So those are you can get some idea. I do this because seasonal forecasting and even subseasonal forecasting, in my opinion, is where synoptic forecasting days 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was about 30 years ago. And I think to really improve, we need to be responsible to verify what we've done, even though this is just a qualitative verification. There are quantitative verifications too, but nobody wants to actually use the same units. And therefore, it's a slippery slope that they're on in terms of trying to verify this. There were significant events. Yeah, John?
Well, I just wanted to ask a question before we got away from this part of your talk. And again, going into the season, of course, because it's a strong El Nino, the confidence was high that, looking at most of these forecasts, they're pretty similar. Mm-hmm. Cooler and moisture across the south, warmer and drier across the north. And I'm wondering, obviously it's been it hasn't worked out nearly to the extent that the high confidence because of what we expect from a strong El Nino. Yeah. And I'm wondering whether we may not have any thoughts about this, but why it's been such a different El Nino.
Well, I think it's partly also due to the North Pacific, and I will show you when I get to my dancing gorillas, okay. Which are coming back for an encore because they had such a fun time when they danced here in November that they just had to be. So yeah, I think there's some clues. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I think the disposition and the distribution of anomalies in the North Pacific played a role, as well as the fact that we'll look at the ENSO too. But yes. It's not just sufficient to say we did okay. It's why did the models not really catch the specifics of the distribution of anomalies, especially in the Northeast.
Well, I know the CFS, as you said, has a really big warm bias.
Yes.
But if you went with the CFS in December, you would have rocked really warm. It showed it really nailed the East United States. In fact, you made a video that said that CFS should have shown it really warm, but then you mentioned the NAO and the ENSO and kind of. You went contrary to that.
Yes.
You personally went contrary to
which was a
CFS.
mistake.
The CFS really nailed, I think, December at least. But the problem is it was really warm. And I've noticed too, and you mentioned this, it's got a severe warm bias.
It does. But actually, the ECMWF is actually showing a cool bias now too. So
the average is perfect.
Which is and I will show you the blend that we use at the World Climate Service. This is something I thought was amazing. This just came out earlier this week. That I didn't know this, but it says that January in the contiguous U.S. snow cover was the 7th largest on record. Did you know the snow cover? I didn't think it was all that much snow covered, but I guess in the plains it was snow covered, and that's a lot of big square states out there that you have to drive a long way to go. But the drought area is down quite a bit too. It's down to 15.5% as of Groundhog Day, which is the lowest it's been since October 2010. So this is my Weather World colleagues were kind enough to invite me back to make a forecast. So I thought, well, let's see what I said. Since it was on the web, it was tweeted around. And this is the forecast. When did we do this? Back in November sometime? Yeah. And we said not as bitter as last winter. Well, that was actually a no-brainer, but that was true. Close to normal, a bit below. It's not going to be a bit below. We'd have to be 40 degrees below normal for the next 2 weeks to even get to normal.
Still a shot.
Yeah, really. I don't think so. Notably wetter than last winter. I think that's true. We actually had a relatively dry time, especially the east snowier. Well, heck, one storm did it. A blind squirrel found that nut. And it could be bookends of chill. That didn't really work out because it never really got cold early. Maybe it'll get cold in March, but that's still pending. So this is the comparison, I think, what John was alluding to last night in his Weatherwise segment. This is 2014-15, December 1st until the 9th of February, and this is 2015-2016, December 1st. And it's a totally different character than last year. We've had like 5 or 6 record highs. We had none last year. Last year we had a number of well, we're just getting into the record low period. And of course, the frequency of temperatures above normal have been really quite pronounced this year. So, but of course, what was remarkable last year is it was a mild December. I'm talking about 2014. It was a slightly below normal January, and then it was a frigid February. And the February was sufficiently cold to change the whole sign of the 3-month period. So that's why people were still getting nervous. But who could have forecast back in the beginning of December that the last 2 or 3 weeks of February were going to be so bitter cold? I don't know anybody. No subseasonal forecasts are that good at this point. So let's go back to the and address the issue that John brought up, which is the dancing gorillas. So this is the this is what it looked like. The sea surface temperature anomalies back in and by the way, there are there's Gorilla 1, Gorilla 2, and Gorilla 3. You can decide which one's which. But the big gorilla, of course, was ENSO. And this is the ENSO anomaly at the end of October. This is the warm anomaly that had been there in the winter of 2014-15 and was there again at the beginning of 2015-2016. And then there was this cool anomaly, which has been interesting to follow why people attribute it. Some folks are saying, oh, it's part of the ice melting in Greenland and that sort of thing. That's nonsense. It's a circulation issue as far as the wind circulation in that part of the Atlantic. Here we are now at the end of January, so just 11 days ago, and so still looks pretty robust. But look at the big difference in the North Pacific. So, John, I think that was one of the reasons why things changed so much, is that the North Pacific cooled off big time. The PDO is almost to neutral right now, where it had been very strongly positive, and the gorilla number 3 is still there in the North Atlantic. So that's why Europe is having a very mild winter, although they did get cold for a while during the middle of January. This is the evolution, looking from February 82 to early February 83. So this was the big one. This is the 97-98, again February 97 to February 98, I should say. And then this is this year, and they're really quite different. In fact, if you'll notice, see how by the time we got to this time of the winter in those two, now the 82 event was a late bloomer. It didn't peak until mid-January in terms of 82s, and so whereas 97 peaked back in November, or I should say early December. This year it peaked early, but actually there's another wave in there, and I think that's what's surprising. And the guidance, both statistical and numerical guidance, have not shown that there was going to be another Kelvin wave in the tropical Pacific. So it's holding its own, and it's not cooling off anywhere near as much on the other side of the date line. And in fact, if anything, in the subsurface, it's warming considerably over a wider span of the tropical Pacific. So it appears that this ENSO is not going to do the sudden flip like it did in 97 or in 83, or 98, I should say. If indeed it lingers, Jeremy Ross did this look back, and it doesn't happen very long that El Nino lingers into the spring. But when it does, and here are some of the years, you'll see that none of them have been very recent except 83 and 92, which was a weaker event. This is the March, April, May temperature departures across the U.S., with the blue showing, this is looking at the percent years out of those 10 years that were above normal. And there's no above normals in the east or the southeast if El Nino lingers, if that's the case. If you look at the surface-based analogs, which is another methodology of being able to make a forecast, that's what we used in the long shots. January was kind of a weird month because the anomalies were rather piecemeal, even though it was a cool month overall. It was warm in California. It was coolest in Kentucky. It was very warm in Maine. It was somewhat wet in California. It was very wet in Florida, and it was rather dry in Oklahoma and also in Ohio. So I used those 7 areas to come up with what followed in the March, April, May afterward. And this is the pattern that showed up. It kind of surprised me. It also has somewhat cool in the northeast, and the warmth, instead of being in the northwest, is actually in that period in the southern plains. And the dryness is also in the southern plains, so it looks like we lose the subtropical connection of the ENSO relatively early on, if indeed that surface anomaly is correct, and ends up being relatively moist in the northeast. This is the dynamic model. So this is the multi-model calibrated. So you look at this and you can't see it anymore because you have to close your eyes because this is actually proprietary information. But I picked it off our site. And this is using the ECMWF and the CFS calibrated forecast for March, April, and May. So March, April, and May. Now, they once again keep the strength of the signal of ENSO is overwhelming. So warmth dominates, and it's primarily across the whole country except in parts of the Southwest or in South Texas. So I'm not sure I even believe that, and that's why there's still opportunity for us to be in business because we can discount even long-range guidance. So as far as the weekend weather is concerned, this cartoon was in the paper, I think, on Sunday or Monday. I'll let you read it. Anyway, so you can chuckle about that if you so please. So let's take a look at what's going to happen in terms of the weekend, and we'll go to the guidance. And of course, we have an Arctic front coming through. Of course, we have this thing up here. Might as well go back and those of you that haven't seen this yet, you can salivate over what the Canadian model is doing here, taking a low virtually right up the spine of the Appalachians. And dumping, what was it, Bill? 3 inches? Over 3 inches of liquid here.
Yeah, just west of here, about 25 inches of snow.
Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So we'll be taking bets on whether that's going to happen, because it's unlikely.
Over under.
Was that? Well, it phases. That's the issue. It actually phases the waves, which some of the guidance has been doing, but most of it has not. So let's go to a little bit more reasonable model, although one wonders. We'll look at the NAM regional, reasonable and regional. And the main issue, of course, is we have a snow band just to our north in about an hour and a half's time. Not picked up very well here. It's another frigid night. Tomorrow's a not as cold a day, although it may be imperceptible to John Q. Public. And then we have this. I love when the guidance does this. It looks like it's incontinent in terms of its precipitation regime. But I interpret this area as just being a case of a lot of snow showers breaking out in what is going to be a brief period of warm advection, a differential advection really, ahead of the next front. And then the front comes through sometime. Now, I say this because the one error that most models make with Arctic fronts is they tend to be just a little bit too fast. Arctic air has to go up over every hill and dale to get in here because it's really low-level stuff, and therefore it may be a little slower than this. Rather than coming in the middle of the night on Friday, maybe it comes in around daybreak on Saturday, which is a favorite time, as we know, for snow squalls here anyway. So probably there'll be a quick inch of snow as the Arctic front comes through and the wind shift from west-southwest to more north-northwesterly. And then the temperature on Saturday should just go down. I don't think at best it holds steady, and most likely it just keeps falling. And oh, that's right, I should do the mouse. Forgot. Yeah, so here we are approaching 6Z Sunday morning, and there we have it. We're right at 9Z, so 4 a.m., and we are just about 2 degrees below zero, according to the 2-meter temperature forecast from the 12-kilometer NAM. So you can take it as you please, but I suspect that our very stingy thermometer here will only get to 1.
The winds are an issue.
Yeah, there is a bit of wind, although it lightens up a bit. But I expect I'll probably be close to 10 below on the side of Mountain and Tussey. So, was that? Okay. Or 7 below.
The winds are letting up at that.
Yeah, the winds. See, Bill, here's 12Z, and
Yeah, that could make you a lot colder and we stay warmer.
yeah, because of the open heat island effect, so to speak. So that's the first event, the first issue. It's just going to be a brutal weekend, disgusting, cold, whatever. If you like cold, I guess it's great, but it's not going to be producing very much precipitation. Then the GFS, at least in terms of the 12Z run, and we'll look at the plumes as well. We have this event that comes in. The high kind of comes right over us, so but it's during the day Sunday. The clouds come in rather quickly on Sunday night, so I think that the temperatures Sunday night will probably hold steady or rise. And then we have what looks like at this point, which is the challenge. We have a bifurcated or a split wave. One warm advection northern event comes through at this point. Looks like it's going to come through Monday or early Monday into Monday afternoon, with losing some oomph as it does. There's still some high that stays to the north. You can see it up here off the New England coast, but that looks like it could produce a couple inches, 2 to 3 or something to that effect. Now there's a trailing wave, and this is where the guidances have been all over the place. Some of them, the Canadian obviously phases them, which makes for a very exciting event. The European had phased it a couple times earlier in the week. Now it's saying no, it's primarily just a northern branch wave, and the trailing southern branch wave stays to our south. But in this particular case, the southern branch wave is real in the GFS, but it's also rather warm. So it would say, it's a rainstorm. I tend to think because there's yet another wave upstream, so there's 3 waves. There's one associated with warm advection on Sunday night or early Monday. There's another wave which is associated with this southern branch disturbance. Then there's another northern branch wave that causes, and they all seem to agree with this, that causes this disturbance that comes up the coast to take on a negative tilt. And therein is where it gets really kind of dicey, because these negatively tilted waves, albeit the high is already gone. So we've lost the high, but you can still get some fairly interesting precip patterns out of a negatively tilted developing low. And I tend to think that what will probably happen is that the southern branch wave will bring us some significant precipitation, over ½ inch of liquid on Tuesday to Tuesday night. More than likely majority of it being snow, but I think it'll probably also mix with sleet and maybe even freezing rain, because it's a classic warm advection. Then the cold air sloshes back in, not as cold as what we're going to have this weekend, but thicknesses are down into the 5 teens again for a couple days, and then the Pacific takes over for at least 10 days, and we get a mixture of Pacific and polar air, and it gets relatively mild in the mid-Atlantic area before the guidance indicates the NAO shows that it should go negative at the end of the month, and probably right around the 27th, 28th, 29th, we may go back into a trough back in the east, and it may be our last opportunity for winter.
I noticed on the GFSPC and the NACE yesterday, like if you, the day 1 forecast and day 16 forecast, the power looked identical.
Yeah,
because it reloaded.
It's just reloading. Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's not, that it would just seem to be in an oscillation. Let's see if the 12Z's in. No, the 12Z's not in yet, as far as the GFS. But this is the precip plume that for State College from the 6Z run, and arguably the 6Z run tends to be the worst skill, but it still shows a fair bit of liquid. Some of them have over 2 inches of liquid. But the mean is 0.66, and it comes primarily in this period starting on 16th, which is what, Tuesday? Yeah. So even though Monday, of course, is a holiday, the schools are closed, at least the elementary and high schools closed, and they have that's their snow makeup day. So it looks like they may lose 2 days out of it, because the school district tends to be pretty trigger happy these days of calling days off. when it may or may not be necessary. Anything else you want to see in this? We can look at the temperatures.
Aren't there really 3 clusters of solutions there?
You mean this one down here, Fred?
Yeah, there's one of them. There's sort of, we're going to have a little warm advection event, and then the subwave goes off to the east. We don't get much. Then there's that one there. Isn't that about an inch of liquid around there?
Yeah, that's about maybe a little over an inch. Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
then there's the Canadian type solutions.
Yeah, which is much broader spread on that one.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those seem, I'm just interpreting what I see here.
Yeah.
Those seem to be 3, from the GFS standpoint, equally likely scenarios, right?
Although the 2 that are less liquid are more likely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, it does look like there's 3 possibilities.
What's the temperature? What's the temperature?
Sure. No, the temperature's all over the place. In fact,
Yeah, but it's generally cold. The 2-meter temperatures are mainly below freezing, and the 8
Yes.
temperatures are most models. So I'm going to guess it's the Baldwin technique that they use that's kind of skewing the precip type.
well, look at, and then if you look out further out, of course, one is the min, one's the max, but the spread here is, from 0 to 50. It was like
Gives you a warm feeling.
I'm doing the temperature like you did with the precip, with the storm on the 22nd. There you said, well, it's 0 to 12 inches.
Yeah.
Here it could be 0 or 50 degrees. So take what you like. That's why this is the Andy Warhol winter. It's all condensed into a few days. So I know we're running out of time. This is a great page that I guess we don't have time to look at. We can see if the French have come for no. All right.
How about the UK Met?
All right. How about it? Go back.
I didn't know. I was on this phone call, I guess, the day before the big storm on the East Coast on the 22nd. I didn't know NCEP now uses medial transverse model.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I've been looking at it.
Is the UK Med G?
No, that's it.
Yes. Okay. So this is a new page to me, so I'm just.
Then just get classy.
Yes.
Classique, yes. Oui, classique. So we'll just clip through this. How's that?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. Oops.
Oh, but unfortunately,
Zeros.
Should I?
You arrows.
I'll just go down a little bit here.
Make it smaller.
Make it smaller, so it doesn't go flipping out on us. Am I? This is every 6 hours.
Until 72.
Okay. All right. So here comes the big high. All right. Now we're starting to cook with gas. Here's the low. Notice the high, of course, has gone off the coast. Although the models tend to move it a little bit too fast over the ocean, and the Atlantic is exceptionally warm right now. Just off the shelf water is very, very, very mild. And
But once again, that's a broad southeasterly flow.
yes, yeah, which should be pretty juicy, I would think. I don't know which is the 540 thickness. I don't know what the colors are here.
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's French. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So there, the low ends up over Burlington. So it would track probably right up the Piedmont. Yeah. It'll be interesting, and the potential for liquid is relatively high, but it remains to be seen whether that's going to actually turn out in that sort of scenario. So this is the Arctic onslaught. By the way, you can probably see it, but that dashed blue line is what we're going to see the 500 decameter thickness come over. So if you look out hard enough, you'll see that go by. Okay. All right. There's the plumes with the silver thaw. So to summarize, the winter forecasts actually were pretty decent, in my opinion, especially with temperature. Precip wasn't so great. Spring outlook depends upon the ENSO evolution. It probably turns cooler than average for either March or April. It does look like there's some weight to that. Weekend outlook is bitter. The bitter end struggles to get to 0 at the weather station. The next week's storm, it's missing that distinct short wave to get phased in the southern branch. But I think that the front end on Monday is a 2 to 4 incher. Whether we can get a lot more after that is still to be seen. That's it. I think we're out of time. Thank you. questions or comments for those of you who have time to linger? Andrew?
You mentioned the three gorillas. It seems like only one of those gorillas have really changed. Do you associate that with how different our winter has been from
Last year? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the North Pacific was a big arbiter in that. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, this is me. As my as my grandkids like to say, what doing, Pap? In this case, I was trying to keep my Andrew's feet out of my face. Abigail was trying to pick the hairs off my mustache, and poor Ryder was just saying I've had too much fun. So, okay. Thanks so much.
Next speaker will be Dave.
Get away from those.